the wedding industry is a vain industry. Once you're perceived as something, it's hard to kind of get across those stigmas. So like if you're considered a low budget photographer, it's hard to get to luxury market, without time and pretty drastic changes. And not to say it can't be done, but with a wedding venue, especially, we're like, well, we could buy a piece of property and put a tent on it, and then slowly build it out over time. But we're like, if we do it that way, it's going to take 15 years to really change the mold and all. And so we're like, well, we'd rather be patient and kind of just do it right out of the gate.
We document and share best practices around owning, operating, and managing world-class wedding venues.
All right, Carson Coker, thank you so much for coming on the Venue RX. I am so excited to talk to you and just hear more about your venue.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, I have it pulled up. We're going to be sharing the links in the episode. And for anyone who's joining us on audio or visual, you might get to see a little bit more of what we're talking about. But I highly encourage you to check out Mossy Meadows, mossycreek.com, which is the website. But Carson, before we start talking about the venue, could you take us back and just kind of share a little bit about yourself personally and professionally prior to getting in the wedding and event industry?
Yeah. So really, I apologize. My wife is the one that should be doing this interview, but the kids are home for the summer, so they're across the street, and I don't know what they're up to today, but according to her, I've never really had a real job. So we've been married almost 11 years ago, and when we got married, we kind of looked at wedding venues, and she was a hairstylist, had a hair salon, so she was kind of in the wedding world just through hair. And we were like, we should really do that one day. And that was kind of something we got married young, and so just kind of put on the back burner. And then I was actually a children's pastor for a couple years, had my own business. She had a hair salon, just kind of always been entrepreneurial. And about actually 7 or 8 years ago, one of my close friends from high school got married and asked me to do his wedding video. He knew that I'd mess around with video here and there. And so he was like, look, I got no budget for a whole video. You're already coming to the wedding. What do you think about bringing a camera? So another friend of ours from high school, we shot the wedding video. One thing led to another. I guess people liked the video. And 6 months to a year later, we're basically doing wedding videos, not necessarily full time, but we were doing better off of wedding videos than we were at my children's pastor job, salary, and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of, I guess, was the spark that rekindled, like, hey, we've talked about doing something on the venue side of this. Let's really go for it. And so after about a year doing wedding videos, my wife and I kind of really started looking at what would it take to make a venue work. We had a 100-year-old house in a little downtown area that we had remodeled. And so we were like, well, we had a couple people that had asked us, like, can we do a backyard wedding? It had really pretty pecan trees in the back. And so we had a couple friends and family do some backyard weddings there. And we were like, hey, we can do this. So we sold that place, took all of our equity, and literally wrote a check for everything that we had in the bank. And we were 26 at the time and bought a piece of property. And that was in 2017. So here we are. So.
Wow. I'm curious. So you built the venue, correct?
Yes, we built it.
Okay. I'm so excited to chat about this because I've talked to a couple of people who, in fact, most of my guests, I would say, have either inherited a property, they have rehabbed an existing property, they, maybe even bought into a wedding venue or, something like that. But this is cool because I'm curious about the process. And for anyone listening who is interested in buying a piece of land and building on it, I just think this could be super valuable. So at what point, I'm curious, when is your wedding anniversary? But
May 12th, 2012.
Oh, so, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys just got over the 11-year mark.
Yeah. Like 2 months ago. So yeah. just our anniversary.
My wife and I are coming up on 11 years, August 2nd. So I was like, we're tracking pretty
right there.
Close there.
Yeah. Wells.
When you originally thought about it, she has her job, you're doing wedding videos, what were some of the maybe mental considerations or mental hurdles that you guys were facing and overcoming in your decision to sell this house you had remodeled, buy a piece of land? I mean, that's a big undertaking. That's not something that most people just randomly do, right?
I mean, I think, and this is anybody in the wedding industry, like the number one thing is just the money. I think we both had enough wedding experience to know the wedding industry is a vain industry. And so like once you're perceived as something, so, it's hard to kind of get across those stigmas. So like if you're considered a low budget photographer, it's hard to get to luxury market, without time and pretty drastic changes. And not to say it can't be done, but with a wedding venue, especially, we were like, well, we could buy a piece of property and put a tent on it, and like, just get some, and then slowly build it out over time. But we're like, if you're, and not that there's anything wrong with doing stuff like doing it that way, but we're like, if we do it that way, it's going to take 15 years to really change the mold and all. And so we were like, well, we'd rather be patient and kind of just do it right out of the gate. And, to build venues is, we laugh all the time. People get drunk at weddings and they'll be like, hey, me and my buddies, we got a piece of property. We're thinking about doing this. You think we could do it for like $250,000? I'm like, go for it.
You got it, man. You can do this.
I think you can. Yeah. I mean, yeah. My wife, she rolls her eyes and gets agitated. I'm like, I encourage them. I'm like, yeah, like I want to do it. Let's go. So, that was kind of the thing, is like, you're looking at something, you're like, this is going to be millions of dollars. We were 26 at the time. So, convincing a bank to do a loan, that was a whole ordeal in itself. We were in a fortunate situation where I'd done a lot of the remodeling on our house. And so we had a lot of equity in a house. So we had a pretty good chunk of money to put down on it. But, they still viewed it as a pretty big risk. I know we turned in our business plan to the bank as to what we, minimum we thought we could do the first year. And, we're like, we can do at least this the first year. I think it was like $350,000 is what we had told them. And we can make it all work. We can, survive off of a $30,000 salary, and we can, pull it off. So, the good thing for us though was, we opened in, if you go by our social media, we consider December 1st our anniversary. But that was my first cousin's wedding. And so it was kind of like a test run. So December 1st, 2018. But May of 2019 is when we really opened for paying customers. So we started booking weddings basically January of 2019. And, I think we hit $350,000 within the first 2 months. So we, we actually were able to pivot our plans because we were still wrapping up some construction. We were able, because of that, to cash flow a good bit more of the construction costs than we had also thought to. So we were able to do a few things a little nicer. Then, we had originally planned, changed some stuff around. Because that was the one thing that we knew early on, is there was a lot of stuff we were going to have to go back and redo. And I hated to, waste money and then have to turn around and do it differently later. But, when you are on a shoestring budget trying to pull it all together, that's just kind of some of the sacrifices. So I was laughing looking at your questions, because there was what are things you would do differently? I'm like, there's a lot of things I'd do differently if the money situation had been different. But, we did it, and here we are, and we're actually under the biggest renovation that we've done since we've opened right now. So we did not do any weddings the entire month of July this year, because we're replacing all of our sod with artificial turf, and we're actually putting in a pond as well. So Um, literally looking at tree stumps burning right now out the window. So it's been a wild ride. COVID obviously didn't help, anything with that, but yeah, it was cool process for sure.
I'm curious, how did you, I mean, that's some pretty rapid growth. And I bet the bank was happy. Like if you were, saying that you were going to do 350 in the first year, that, you did it in the first couple months. What do you attribute that success to? Was it the beauty of what you had built? Do you think the wedding industry is really hot there in northern Atlanta, Georgia, or you're in northern?
Yeah, north. Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of it. I think the location, piece of property was a pretty piece of property. It's got a great view, and we obviously had nothing to do with that. So, I think a lot of it though just was, my wife has, a good feel on styles and trends and stuff like that. And so we were kind of right where the market really, there just wasn't many options like us, especially in the Southeast at the time. I think it was just a perfect storm. The economy was blowing and going, during those years. So, and now when I say 350, we didn't obviously generate, like that was in bookings. Yeah. So, but
still, that's tremendous. I mean,
no. Yes,
it's for 350. I mean, that's like,
it was great. So, I mean, we had, $100,000 plus to cash flow things that we were not even planning on being able to do yet. So, that was all, pretty big deal, but I don't think it was necessarily one thing in particular as much as just, like I said, just kind of a perfect storm of like Atlanta is a major market. There's definitely a lot of demand for the North Georgia mountains. It's Helen, which is about 13 miles north of us, brings over 5 million visitors a year just to Helen alone. So, I mean, it's a popular Dahlonega, which is another town about 13 miles west of us, that they bring millions of people as well a year. So, a lot of wineries were popping up, a lot of wedding venues were popping up. And so kind of just that sweet spot of people wanted to be out, not so far from a major city that flights and all were a problem, but just far enough out away that they could offer their guests like a full weekend experience. Have a lot of, smaller destination weddings where they'll come in and they'll rent these little resorts, go to some of these little resorts for the whole weekend and have the wedding, that type of stuff. So, but then, yeah, I don't want to undersell. I mean, my wife definitely had a lot to do with just the design and all that aspect of it too. So she knocked it out of the park, and I think luckily that's what the couples were looking for.
Cool. Carson, I'm curious about the venue itself. So for anyone who's just listening to this on the podcast, could you describe the venue, the grounds, kind of what is the venue like?
So, I mean, we kind of call it like modern meets mountains. I mean, we are, I guess you'd say like modern farmhouse. There's a lot of white, a lot of black accents. So I don't know. Some people call it a barn. We basically, my wife's like, we wanted to make it as unvarnished as possible, if that's a term, but to like kind of deconstruct a barn. So it's really a lot of open air. The venue itself is about 85 feet long, and one whole wall, all the doors can open completely. So basically, you can just flow directly in and out of the venue straight into the ceremony area and like the courtyard area. But we're sitting kind of up on a hill overlooking Meadows, which is why the name's Meadows. And we've got views of Yonah Mountain, which is probably one of the most hiked mountains in the state of Georgia. So it's a pretty well-known mountain, which is kind of cool. And then a couple good views of like Pink Mountain and actually Leadpole Mountain, which I don't know how I got its name, but so, you're kind of like, our ceremony spot is definitely unique, I guess you could say. the way it's graded and all, you're kind of sitting on a hill, and it's not like an infinity edge, but like you're kind of, the edge drops off behind the ceremony location. So you just have these rolling hills behind you of grass, and then there'll be a pond in the bottom as well now. And then you've got long range views of mountains and stuff like that. So, I think that's obviously one of the major selling points. I mean, that's the focus of every single ceremony. But then behind that, you've got the main venue, and then you've got the actual bridal suite house, and they kind of sit in a way that the courtyard's kind of in between them. So we kind of use the buildings to help give it a defined boundary. And a lot of that type of stuff was honestly just like us going to venues, like when my wife was doing hair or we were doing video, so just kind of looking at things that other venues have done and been like, hey, we would do this differently, or we would do that differently, or we like how they do this, we like how they do that. I know our venue doesn't really look anything like this particular one, but Pippin Hill Farms up in Virginia. I remember seeing them on Instagram and just thinking like, which they're a winery, but like their winery and their venue kind of helped define their courtyard area. And so that was kind of some inspiration that we took from that. It was like, hey, I like how they used the buildings versus just having a never ending area off to the side of the venue that just kind of goes into the woods, and there's no real, defined boundaries and stuff like that. So just, took design elements, that
makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
Using the space correctly. Like, you do have those venues as just like one building, and then it's infinity in all different directions. And to your point, I mean, you're talking about the flow of the event, right? You're talking about how people see the space, and it's probably a much easier to envision an event in the space, seeing the different areas clearly defined versus kind of here's the area. But yeah, Carson, so I'm curious, you mentioned your wife a couple times. What do the two of you do for the venue? Like, how do you divide up the labor? What are you handling? What's she handling in terms of venue operations and sales and marketing and all that?
So it's changed a lot over the years. When we closed on the property, my son was not even a year old, and my daughter was 2 days old. So that's a whole story in of itself. We like bumped up closings on our house and the venue, all because my wife's due date was basically right on my son's birthday, and my daughter decided to come a month early. So we went in on a Monday for her checkup, and the OBGYN was like, you're having the baby today. And I was like, well, we are supposed to close our house and property tomorrow. Is there any way this could, like, she might have a baby later in the week? And she was like, no, she's having the baby today. I was like, okay. So I scrambled, called some people. We got the closings moved to Thursday instead of Tuesday. She ended up being born on Tuesday, like late morning. So yeah, we had a 2 day old. We had to move, and
Insane.
it was an insane time. So.
Well, an 11-month gap between kids is no joke.
They're 11 months in a day. I know.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily plan it that way, but it makes life easy now. So it's crazy. So yeah, that was wild. I was having to like leave the hospital, go move stuff out of our house, go back to the hospital, go move some more stuff. So yeah, it was kind of quite the ordeal. But my background with being more like in the video side of things, I did, do a lot of social media stuff, do a lot of marketing, actually had a marketing and media kind of company before we did this. So I kind of had a little more of a background than that. She did hair, did interior design type stuff on the side. And then I also have a little bit of, like, almost went to college to become an architect, and then kind of last second decided to go a different route. So I've always kind of dabbled in architectural type stuff. So early on, I was more, I guess you could say, like, help design the buildings as far as dimensions, and literally I drew the blueprints for the buildings, and then she kind of came in with the design elements. We got somebody to do some 3D renderings, kind of got everything launched while we were doing the construction phase. But then even like once we started really opening and running, her and her sister were doing like all the, I guess you could say almost like planning side, so they were doing the tours and they were doing the bookings. And the first year we did in-house planning for all the weddings we booked. So that about killed us. So they were doing the planning for those weddings. But then a lot has also just evolved. So, I mean, I was like kind of doing the grounds work and the upkeep and still help overseeing some of the construction, wrapping that up. But then now my job, I would say, has evolved more to, I kind of handle most of the day-to-day from the financial side. And then we have my sister-in-law still works for us part-time. She also owns her own planning company. So that's kind of a good relationship. And so her role is she's like, and this actually all just happened this January, she shifted roles. So before she was like all things weddings, so she would handle tours and bookings and all that stuff. But then now she actually is once the couples book with us, Allie takes over, and we hired a girl named Shelby back in January. And so she kind of is all things up until the point of booking. And then my wife, I guess, is kind of just the liaison between the two. If there's ever, questions or something like that, she kind of is just there for both of them. And then she handles like, scheduling our employees on weddings and stuff like that. So kind of divide and conquer. We use an accounting. I have an accountant that does all of our bookkeeping stuff. I think that was just kind of learn. I mean, every venue's different. I know one venue owner we were talking to not too long ago, like she has more of an accounting background. And so like, she would never turn that over to people. So like, just trying to delegate some stuff, but I guess I would kind of say I would be almost like a CEO role, and my wife would be more of like a COO role. But there again, we got 5 full-time employees. So, we're at the stage where everybody still wears a good bit of hats. So and then a lot of just hired help. So I do hire somebody to help us on social media, even though I still do a good bit of it. Hire somebody to, like I said, do the accounting. We have one full-time groundskeeper. And then his brother, he's been here the past 3 weeks helping us on this project. So anytime we have like bigger projects, we pull in a few extra people, that type of stuff. So it's just kind of a team effort.
Yeah. How do you look for talented people to kind of help support? Like, it sounds like you look for people that complement the strengths that you already have. So, if someone, you're going to hire someone for accounting, whereas that other venue owner wouldn't hire someone in accounting.
Yeah.
How are you looking? And then also, is it easy to hire people in your area, or has that been a challenge?
I mean, I think, after COVID, everything like was a little bit of a challenge in some of those areas, but I think we've been pretty fortunate in the sense of like, Allie, my sister-in-law, obviously we couldn't have done any of it without her. So she was huge, from the beginning. My wife, so, they're both talented. They're good at that type of, job. I mean, my wife ran a hair salon, so she was used to, having girls working underneath her and that type of stuff. So, she had, just good management skills, I guess you could say, as far as that goes. And then Allie is a super organized, doesn't, almost too organized. Like when we go on trips, I'm like, Allie, we don't have to have it all planned out, so, just looking at their talents and all, I'm always have been more on the creative side, kind of that type of thing, but like planning and organization all have never been my strong suit. So like we knew early on, don't let me handle anything like that. Accounting, I did that for the first couple of years. And then once there was the money there, I quickly was willing to farm that out. And,
can we talk about that for a second? Because I'm curious, like what that timeline was like for anyone, like a new venue owner listening to this. How many like in that first 6 months to a year, how many weddings did you book, and then where are you at now? Like, what is that journey?
We ended up that first year, we booked over $1 million worth of weddings. Now, that being said, we didn't start really having paying weddings till May. So I think the first actual like May until the end of the year, we probably did $400,000, $450,000 worth of weddings that first year. But I want to say we booked maybe $1,009,000 or something, like just barely went over that number that first year. And then we were blowing and going. 2020 opened up, like we should have done over $1 million in revenue that year. And we got to wrap up our first year with COVID hitting. So we ended up losing over $400,000 worth of weddings. That was, in some ways, it was great that we were so new. We didn't have all the payroll expenses and all the monthly things that a lot of venues have. So, I mean, in some ways, like the fact that we were so new, it was a benefit through COVID because there just wasn't really a long track record of doing things a certain way, so we were able to easily pivot. But then at the same time, it was also brutal being so new because like we didn't have much reserves, so we're still cash flow and everything. And so that was kind of interesting. I remember this was probably like March 14th or 15th, right when people kind of realized like, hey, the 2 weeks to slow the spread type deal isn't going to just stay at 2 weeks. And so I think we had lost like $85,000 worth of weddings in one day. And I told my wife, I was like, just stop answering the phone. Like we'll lose more money tomorrow. So, yeah. So, that was kind of interesting. Like our story because of that is definitely different than most people's are, because most people are going to have a little, like, it was almost like we were really blowing up and then everything just came to a screeching halt and then we had to almost start back over. But, once, into 2020, things started picking back up. It was probably about that time that, and actually Courtney, our accountant, so from the beginning, she started, like I paid her to do our taxes and all. So like I had that relationship with her from the time we started the venue, but she wasn't doing like payroll. She was just doing more like quarterly filings, and that was basically it. And so then once 2021 picked back up and we had staff and we had just some stuff, she started taking on a little more of she handles our payroll, she handles our sales taxes and, everything there. So, so I mean, she's great.
Did you get back to that kind of $1 million mark plus? And have you seen like a slowdown? Have you seen, and I'm curious about that because that is something that I think that mark, selling $1 million weddings is something that a lot of venue owners, aspire to, depending on where they're located and all that, of course. But, so tell me about kind of the rest of the journey after 2021.
I mean, it was kind of like in 2021, we would have done over $1 million, but we had over 300,000 that were rescheduled from 2020. So, I think we ended up doing right at 850, so like we would have actually been about 1.15 or so. So that's kind of been honestly the story for 2021 and 2022 were just like weird years as far as rescheduling affecting 2021, 2022. We had actually, so what is now the bridal suite, there's a house that's a 2-bedroom house that we've designed to be more like an Airbnb. That's the bridal suite. And we were living in that when we first built it, and we built a small little, like this office right now is, 400, 500 square feet. So it's a small little office that we built to be the bridal suite. And we were living in the house, and we were only going to do that for like 6 months to a year. Then COVID hits. So that timeline got completely changed. So then, 2020, we're still living in the house. 2021, we're still living in the house. We felt like we're leaving a lot of money on the table in the sense of like the bridal suite kind of was you got a $200,000 bridal suite sitting there versus a $25,000 glorified office. You're like, I really want these couples to be able to utilize it and that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of urgency for us to like, we got to get out. So we actually started construction on our house at the end of 2021 and then completed it Thanksgiving of 2022. So 2022 was a little bit of a strange year. And like my wife was like, I don't want to do over 80 weddings this year, just because we were still living on the property. She was just tired of having, weddings every day of the weekend while, we have a 3 and 4 year old living there, 4 and 5 year old at the time. So, 2023 has been the first year that's really, we're off the property. We're literally a quarter mile away, in our new house. And we've been able to kind of get back to, I guess, quote unquote normal. And so we're on track this year. We probably will have the best year we've had if we can remotely hold pace with what we've done the first 7 months of the year. But, we're not too far from that million mark, and we still got, 5 months left. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's incredible though. I mean, that's so cool. And it's amazing. Like, despite the different setbacks, the different obstacles, the pregnancy. I mean, there's been a lot of different twists and turns for y'all. I'm wondering, as far as systems go, as far as software goes, as far as like other things that you utilize to run the property, are you guys using a CRM system? Do you guys
we use HoneyBook? We definitely don't utilize it to the level that it could be used at. Our biggest fear from the get-go has always been double booking. So like, we have a paper calendar, and until you're written in pen in that paper calendar, you're not officially booked. So, for several reasons, and it's not like a knock on HoneyBook. I think HoneyBook's great. There's a couple things that integrations that should make life easier that actually kind of make our systems harder, so, a combination of, we do use HoneyBook, but we don't utilize any of those because everyone, like Shelby, that's kind of our like point person up until booking, she has her ways that she likes to do stuff. Allie has her ways that she likes to do stuff. So, we do require that everything kind of still run through HoneyBook, but, Allie uses like Aisle Planner, and, I don't know what else she uses, a little more than like Shelby does, because Shelby's not really post booking. So, and then we're also a little different than most venues because my sister-in-law, Allie, she has her own planning business as well. So she has a lot of her stuff that if it's our couple, she still uses her same software, but it's actually with her planning company. So, I know that's not a direct answer to your question, but,
it makes sense because she's using those planning tools. If there's like, I know there's timeline tools, there are different layout tools, and those are things that planners might have. Maybe it wouldn't make as much sense for a venue to have them, but since you've got that relationship.
Yeah. We don't do any in-house planning. Allie is her own company. So, even though a lot of people kind of associate her with us, and I mean, we're happy to claim her, but yeah, she is technically her own, deal. So, yeah. So for that reason, we don't do catering. We don't do alcohol. Now we allow all that stuff, but like they have to bring in outside people. So we're pretty much strictly venue. And then we have 3 cottages on property, but we sold 5 acres to my wife's aunt and uncle. And they actually built the cottages, so they kind of handle the logistics on those and all. So that's nice, so.
So that's when people rent the property, then are they getting, what are they getting when they rent?
So when they rent it, they're getting the venue, the bridal suite, the groomsmen space, and then, we got a little over 100 acres. So, I mean, they've got the whole property to themselves. But the cottages are additional if they want them. So like they're not included, but they're also, not required. So depending on where the couple's from and where the guests are coming from, the cottages probably get utilized at like 85% of the weddings we do have occasionally. weddings that are close enough to where people are just driving back and forth or something like that. But, and then we actually have weddings where we don't have enough on-site accommodation. So like we'll have a destination wedding that might have 50 or 75 people from South Florida or something. And they're like, well, we all want to stay together and we can only hold up to about 45. So we have lost weddings because we don't have enough, or I shouldn't say lost weddings. We've lost cottage rentals because we don't have enough lodging on property. So, but, really 95% of our traditional weddings are utilizing at least some of the cottages. So
that makes sense. This is super cool. I think it's so neat how you guys have grown and how you have like, you're solving people's problems on both the lodging side, the event side. As far as marketing goes, how are you getting awareness into, to your venue? How are you getting leads in?
So that's actually been our, the deep dive that I've been on in the past month is really looking at, the first year. It was kind of like, I just told everything yes. So, if a magazine reached out, I was like, yeah, we'll do it. If anything reached out, like I was like, yeah, we'll just do it just to kind of blitz the market as much as possible. And then with COVID, when COVID hit, it was like, hey, we need to just keep spending marketing to just survive this storm, that type of thing. So we didn't really change anything. And then you get into like, all right, things are back up normal. So we didn't really have time to think and modify anything and then building a house. And so the plan that I came into with ended up getting disrupted for 4 years. So now on year 5, we've actually started kind of really looking at where all of those ad dollars are going to, trying to, really figure out with like Wedding Wire and the Knot. Sometimes it's hard to know, did that lead come from Wedding Wire and the Knot or did it come from somewhere else? And they just ended up like Wedding Wire and the Knot's claiming it because they also have a knot, profile or something like that. So that's been just the things we've really just been looking at is like, trying to figure out where dollars are best spent. Cause like our number one source of leads is Instagram, and I spend almost nothing with Instagram. So I'm like, I'm spending $40,000-$50,000 a year with Wedding Wire and the Knot. What if I just spent $5,000 with Instagram? Like what would that look like? So we've been putting better analytics in place, really following up with a lot of our couples like, hey, when you filled our inquiry form, you said you found out about us through this, but like, is that accurate or did you just click the first one? Just because it's a drop down menu. Really, trying to kind of fine tune that. Because I think everybody, it's not like secrets in the wedding industry, but like, not in the Wedding Wire. In some ways they are like, we do book weddings from them, but at the same time, they cost a lot more than other forms of marketing. So, we use Here Comes the Guide, and like they've been great. We book steadily off of them too. So, but Instagram is probably at least close to 50% of our leads by itself. So
that makes a lot of sense. We've been going through the same thing with the 5 venues that we manage here. It's kind of like what's working. Yeah. To just say yes as much as possible to kind of see what is out there. But I think I hear different, as I've talked to more venue owners nationwide, I've heard different things working in different areas. And depending on the type of venue, I think there's like a buyer profile that I've seen that, is on Facebook, right? And they're, most of the leads are coming from Facebook, but it's
our Facebook ads, they do okay. But, Instagram still just for us has been the real driver. But the one I've really been actually testing a lot is Pinterest. So we've been looking at Pinterest ads because price per click, they're actually great as far as the cost. Or if you look at it like a Wedding Wire, you're like, I'm literally paying $40 a message, or like whatever it comes out to. So, but at the same time, it is a targeted market. So I'm not necessarily here to think Wedding Wire or not. They've been getting enough heat the past week or so on news. So
yeah,
I won't add fuel to that fire.
Yeah, no, we just did an evaluation. We actually one of our team members really knew about Pinterest marketing. And so then she took a course on Pinterest marketing. Gabby Pinkerton, who's been on the show, I think she took her course and some other things. So we actually we're at about 100,000 plus views per month. Yeah. On our boards, but it was hard for us to understand how, like, what translates into what the conversion was. Cause it was like, doubtless people are seeing us. I just don't know if they're making purchase decisions for venues there versus like other style elements that they're pulling together.
Yeah. And that's what's so, I guess, tricky about all of it. So like, with Wedding Wire and the Knot, I found out recently, like from talking to them, they sent us lists and of like people that they said, these are people that we know booked because of us. Well, what they're doing is they're looking at people that clicked us as their venue and also had their profiles on Wedding Wire and the Knot. And they might have even messaged us some from Wedding Wire and the Knot, but then like actually following up with those couples and then being like, well, we saw you on Instagram first, or, I've actually been shocked because like we've done over 400 weddings and I thought that we had booked like 2 off of magazines, so like to me, magazines were more of like kind of a vanity play. Like I've got to, pay to be with some of them just to be able to make some of the contacts in the industry with other people and stuff like that. But like how much value do they actually bring as far as bookings? I didn't really feel like it was really that high. And then when we've been doing this kind of dive into everything and following up with so many of our couples, I've been shocked how many of them are like, yeah, we actually found you in a magazine first. I don't remember which one, but and I'm like, wow, I would have never have known that. So yeah, it's weird. I mean, Facebook's also weird to like, if they come directly off like a Facebook ad, it's one thing, but then, Facebook Messenger is so bad, we have an automated message that tells them literally to not to message us a different way. So bad. We were missing so many messages and stuff. So it literally sends an automated response that says, we don't respond to Facebook messages. So don't expect us, to please messages on these platforms or this way. And so, that's been kind of crazy. And then, this year was the first year we've done anything with Zola. And honestly, for like the price, I think we've booked 3 or 4 weddings off of Zola. So, and for their price point, that's not bad. It's a pretty cheap acquisition cost. I don't know if I would book enough stuff off of Zola, to necessarily completely scrap Wedding Wire or the Knot, but it's interest, like you said, it's interesting. I feel like that's the biggest Wild West of the wedding world right now is like, so much of the tech world, they've gotten it all fine-tuned, but there's a lot of, in the wedding industry still not 100% transparency on some of this stuff. Like, where is that lead really coming from? What's really generating it? And if you're buying on Amazon and an influencer like posts a link or something and you click over from their link, when you go to check out, they know exactly where it came from, but nobody's buying off of our website. So, that's kind of, you can do all the little Google pixels and all the Facebook pixels and all, everything. And it's still tough to sometimes track down exactly where that one came from without just point blank asking them. So that's what we've been doing to a lot of our couples is like just point blank. Yeah. Like you put this, but did you really book us from there? And most of them, I've been surprised too how many on the Honeybook form don't click. They do just click online search or something just to get it to go away. And then when we followed up with them, they told us magazine or something totally different, so I'm like, man, that would have been great to know from the beginning, but
it's interesting. I had a couple who came out to our property. It's just under 110 acres. It's a winery. And when they came out to the property, I said, "Oh, how'd you find us?" And said, "Oh, we did an online search." And I was like, "Yep, I bet you did." And then I said, "Okay, let's, where'd you see us?" "Well, I think Wedding Wire, the Knot," and I kept pushing in. I kept asking, and the guy he said, you know what? I just realized, I think we saw you guys in a couple of different places, but the reason that we inquired was on a subreddit, on a Reddit forum, I guess, on a subreddit, a contributor who he follows, there's some subreddit about winery wedding venues. And he's saying that this wedding venue was great. So then that's what they decided to go and schedule a tour for. And I've had someone else who said AI. I had someone say they put in a ChatGPT search.
Like, what's the best venues?
Winery wedding venues within like a 30-mile radius, and they put in their city. And then there was 10 on the list, and they looked at the Instagrams and the websites of the 10, and they picked 3 and they went and toured them.
That's what I think will be interesting in the marketing side is with some of the AI stuff and all. Like, I think it's going to put some pressure on Wedding Wire than not, which would probably be a good thing to, have a little more transparency on exactly what's going on behind the scenes and stuff like that. Because, vendors all the time ask us, should we advertise with, Wedding Wire than not? And I'm like, unless you're literally a wedding venue or like maybe a caterer that just does massive amounts of catering, like for the photographer, you're just going to be one of 40,000, so yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So yeah, it's kind of a strange world. I think it's plenty of opportunity for anybody that wants to crack into that work as well.
Yep. 100%. Well, Carson, I know we didn't say this on air, but I'm excited to meet you in person. Yeah. Coming out to your venue and
awesome.
Just like looking and seeing it online and then talking to you. It's going to be really cool to come to the event and check out what you guys are doing. And so I'm really pumped. I appreciate you taking the time, out of the construction, everything else you guys are doing to share a bit of your story on the Venue RX. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. And like I said, looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm curious for anyone who wants to find you, connect with you, book their wedding, with you guys, or even just, look, what's the best place to connect with you? We know it's not Facebook.
Yeah. Don't message us on Facebook. You're more than welcome to scroll and look at some posts, but Instagram is probably our most you just want a quick response, have a quick question. Instagram is definitely the best as far as that goes. And then our website, you can just jump on there and fill out the contact form. That puts you straight into Honeybook and kind of gets the whole workflow going. Our website is honestly terrible. It was kind of like a holder website to get us up and running, and then the last 4 years have been. And I build websites sometimes on the side, that type of stuff. So I probably from the get go should have just hired it out, but I was like, why am I going to pay somebody? So 4.5 years later, we still don't have a complete. The website that we're replacing it with is like 75-80% done, but it's just sitting in a Webflow ready to be pushed out. So I've got to get it wrapped up. But the problem, honestly, a lot of it, a tiny bit of my defense has been we have made some major changes the past couple of years. We concreted our drive coming in. We are replacing the sod with artificial turf. So there was some of it where I'm like, when I'm taking these drone shots and it's going to be like the shot you see on the website, it's not even going to be accurate in the next. So we kind of waited to get through this construction point, and hopefully this fall we'll be able to launch the new website, and it'll be a little more up to date, a little better information. Because the one now there's almost nothing there, but that's also been a good experiment in itself, because not saying websites are dead. I think there's definitely a role for them, but we've literally gone 4.5 years with basically a glorified one-page website. So Instagram has really, been the ticket for us. But I think, there's another local venue owner about 3 miles from here that Wedding Wire was their saving grace. Like, they were about to go under, and Wedding Wire kind of saved them. So it's just kind of interesting to see how each venue has its own identity, its own clientele, and got to figure out what works for each one. But yeah, I'll stop rambling and
no, I actually have one more question on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel like you've seen or experienced an increase in competition recently, and kind of how has that played a role in your plans for growth? Has it impacted your pricing at all? You felt any kind of economic pressure from, people are talking about a recession, any of that sort of stuff?
I think we definitely saw at the end of last year a slow, and like we had a slow bookings in September, October, November, and December. And those are never like great months for bookings anyway. But last year we had a very slow couple months. I mean, I think in November we booked 2 weddings or something last year, that's a extremely slow month for us. So, I think everybody was really scared and kind of waiting to see what happens. I feel like this year has been a lot. Not that I think people are still more hesitant. You don't have all this post-COVID money that people are just being slipped it with money. But you're not necessarily seeing the, I guess, fear that you were seeing towards the end of last year. I think people kind of feel like, yeah, we're in a recession, but it's not going to be another '08. I think that was everybody's fear, was like the housing market was just going to bust and everything was going to kind of hit the fan again. But I think people kind of, are on that line of like, they're ready to pull the plug. They're not as scared as they were last year. So, I mean, I think that's a positive note. I think bookings, have been strong for us. I do think though, as far as like what you said, the competition, we live in the county we live in, there's only 30,000 people in this county. So every time like a winery or wedding venue comes to this particular county, I actually really kind of like it, because like it just makes Cleveland area puts it more on the map, makes people from Atlanta more likely to come. The first couple of years we were kind of like a little bit of an island. Like there was 1 or 2 other venues that like people would come tour with us and go tour with 1 or 2 others, but there just wasn't a whole lot of options. So, if you were in Northwest Georgia or something and you wanted to you're like, I'm not driving over there just to look at 1 or 2 places. So in some ways that's actually beneficial. I know some of the other wedding venues around us, when we first opened, they were like worried that we were going to take their business, but in reality, we pull a little bit different clientele than some of them do. And we've had a lot of like, there's one local winery near us. It's a great winery, but like they're primarily a winery, so they don't shut everything down for weddings and all. Well, they've booked like a ton of rehearsal dinners off of us, so, I think there's 52 weekends out of the year. We don't do we try not to do weddings the weekend after Thanksgiving. We try not to do weddings. We end up doing a wedding the Saturday before Easter, but we don't do wedding on Easter Sunday. We try not to do weddings the weekend after Christmas. And so, once you start backing out all that, it's like you got like 48 weekends out of the year that are really good weekends. And there's plenty of business to go around. And so in that sense, I think that just any type of ag tourism, whether it's wineries or wedding venues in like local areas, especially being right outside of Atlanta, drawing people from the Atlanta market to our area is just beneficial. Whereas, the other option would be going up like towards Nashville or going towards Chattanooga, that type of thing. So just giving people a reason to come this side of the state instead of that side of the state is good. But, I think, as far as like you said though, with competition, as far as like venues hurting each other, there is a venue. It's actually ironic because it's a taxpayer funded venue. So that's a little frustrating that opened. Yeah.
What?
It belongs to the city of Gainesville, which is about 12 miles south of us, and it's on the lake, and it's a pretty venue. And so it might hurt us with a little bit of our local market, but so much of our 85% of our weddings are from the Atlanta area, and so they're coming to North Georgia because of the mountain views. So like even though this one with like local Gainesville, Cleveland area brides is a very pretty spot because it's on the lake, our particular clientele that's coming to us, they're coming for a mountain view, and so the lake doesn't offer that, So, I don't know. I guess to wrap that all up, it just so much depends on the identity of the venue. I do think there are venues for sure where I know one in particular is not too far from us, where a venue literally opened like right across the street and from the other venue. And, there's no doubt that obviously hurts, because I mean, they have almost the exact same, they almost share driveways. So yeah, it's like the property's not that different, so you do see some of that kind of stuff, but no, for the most part, kind of figure out what your identity is and really just focusing on that has been where we've tried to keep our sights set, I guess. And so, because even like our Florida brides, they, people are like, why do people drive from Florida to North Georgia? I'm like, why do people drive from North Georgia to Florida? They want something different. So, people here, they don't think of it as anything weird to go have a beach wedding. And then we have tons of like South Florida brides that are like, the last thing in the world I want is a beach wedding. It's hot. They're like, I want to be in the mountains. We even had one, they were from like Miami area, and they're like, she picked February. We're like, why did you pick February? She was like, well, I really like for it to snow on our wedding. And I was like, you do know this isn't like Colorado. Like we might get like 6 inches a year, and it's pretty spread out, kind of thing. And lo and behold, it snowed 3 inches on her wedding. So that's cool. There was grown men from Miami that had never seen snow doing snow angels. So that was pretty cool. But
that's awesome. All righty. Well, Carson, I appreciate it. I'm excited to meet you here in a couple of weeks. And this has been fun. Thanks for coming on the venue. All right.
Thank you for having me.